What if I told you a VTuber crashed her car with her boyfriend in the passenger seat and then asked him to take the blame for it? What if I told you that wasn't even the craziest part? This is the story of Ilya Kashkova, an indie Indonesian VTuber who went from tuning cars to wrecking her life in full view of the internet. And it all started with a single tweet. Ilya Kashkova isn't a major name in VTubing. She's an indie streamer from Indonesia who mainly played Apex Legends, Overwatch, and occasionally posted car content. Her streams had been silent for nearly a year until suddenly she was everywhere, but not because of her gameplay. Instead, she went viral after bragging online about speeding from Jakarta to Surabaya, a trip that normally takes over 10 hours in under 4 to 5 hours. How? By illegally overtaking traffic using the highway shoulder lane. And she didn't just say it, she posted video proof. The internet exploded. Some people saw her as bold, most saw her as reckless and dangerous. Instead of apologizing, Ilia doubled down. She argued with commenters, claiming her custom-built car made it safe, that as long as you calculate things properly, overtaking on the shoulder wasn't dangerous. News outlets picked up the story and eventually, overwhelmed, Ilia deleted her Twitter account. But that wasn't the end, because just weeks later, her ex-boyfriend came forward with a story far darker than reckless driving. The reason Ilya Kashkova was in the spotlight was because of one tweet. She made a public post bragging that she had driven from Jakarta to Surabaya in just 4 to 5 hours. And to understand why this was a big deal, you need to know the distance between those two places. Jakarta to Surabaya is a pretty far trip. In fact, it's almost impossible to cover that distance in that amount of time. But Ilya wasn't shy about it. She outright admitted, "My record from Jakarta to Surabaya is only 4 to 5 hours because the shoulder is open 24/7. Don't imitate it." This tweet went absolutely viral. It was shown to more than 238,000 Twitter users, and Ilya seemed pleased about the attention. People were absolutely outraged, and the tweet sparked wide discussions. Some people bizarrely praised her for her boldness, but most saw it for what it was: dangerously reckless driving. Driving that not only put herself at risk, but everyone else on the road. Then, as if bragging wasn't enough, she decided to post proof. She posted a video of herself overtaking a truck by using the highway shoulder lane. In the video, she can be seen driving next to a truck, speeding past it illegally using the shoulder. Naturally, people called her out, but instead of backing down, Ilya started fighting back. She responded to criticism by belittling the people calling her out. She said, "Seeing all these comments and QRTs just shows people that don't have any idea how to drive and control their rides. People who let their cars do all the job for them, people who doesn't even change oil themselves, people who only know to press gas and brake." And she didn't stop there. She doubled down on defending her use of the shoulder lane, saying, "As long as you're still using your brain and calculating, it's safe to take the shoulder of the road." From that point on, it became a full-on argument between Ilya and the internet. She started going back and forth with users, belittling them for what she claimed was their lack of car knowledge. She said she knows her car, that she built it herself, that she knows its limits. She argued further, saying, "I know it's legally wrong, but I didn't inconvenience or injure other drivers. But I don't use the shoulder of the road for racing without thinking like people who drive stock cars recklessly without checking whether they can do it or not. Just because, oh, my car is fast, then do whatever they want." And to others, she said, "Legally, I was wrong to use the shoulder of the road, but did I inconvenience other drivers? Injure other drivers? Was I racing recklessly? So of course I'd take a taxi, I'd try it out without bothering other drivers." But of course her constant replies and back and forth bickering with netizens only fueled the fires of this controversy and made it a bigger deal. At one point she posted, "It's funny when people say that those who speed are brainless. In fact, there are actually more people who drive slowly but are stupid because they can't drive, so they make it difficult for other people. Meanwhile, those who speed, not all of them, especially those who have been driving in toy cars for decades, actually know more more about the terrain and traffic. In one specific moment, when a user told her that what she did was pure luck and required zero skills, this seemed to hit her where it hurt. Because she fired back, making it clear she didn't believe it was luck. She said she did it on purpose. These endless back and forth arguments only made the situation worse. There were a lot of upset people. And eventually, it got so bad, the local news network picked up the story. One of the headlines read, "Who is Illya Kashkova?" She became the subject of gossip after claiming to have traveled from Jakarta to Surabaya in just 5 hours. Even mainstream Indonesian media was now reporting on this controversy. And finally, all of it became too much for Ilia. She nuked her Twitter account, deleted everything. You'd think that would be the end of the story. That perhaps the backlash she received from the reckless driving scandal would make her reconsider her behavior. But no, because a month later, she was back in the spotlight. This time with a wrecked car, an endangered passenger, a boyfriend she blamed for the crash, and an entire relationship that would unravel into one of the messiest, most chaotic exposés the VTuber community has ever seen. This wasn't just a controversy anymore. This was a full-blown disaster. And Ilia, she was right at the center of it. A month after nuking her Twitter and the whole controversy, Illya Kashkova was back in the spotlight. This time thanks to her ex-boyfriend, a guy named Orby. What started as a breakup turned into a public exposé. It all began with a threat. Orby claimed Ilia had manipulated him, cheated on him, lied to him, and nearly killed him in a car accident. But to understand how it got there, we need to go back. And I'm gonna warn you right now, it's not really the kind of story with sides or a right side, it's just one big fucking train wreck. It started with YouTube. Orby said that 2 years ago, YouTube recommended him a Titanfall montage uploaded by Ilia. He thought she seemed cool, so he followed her on Twitter. They started interacting, bonding over fighter jets and other shared interests. Casual conversations turned into regular interactions. Then came Instagram. One day, the algorithm recommended him Ilia's past life account. He followed her, and this time, she reached out first. They started chatting, and within a week, she was sending him reels and random messages. For Orby, who admitted he's never been in a relationship before, it felt like something more. At this point, things were casual, friendly, nothing too unusual, but that didn't last as things escalated, and fast. They exchanged WhatsApp numbers, started FaceTiming. Orby described them doing night drives together, whether over video call or in person, that isn't clear. But to him, one thing was very clear, they were dating. He says, "We got closer and decided to exchange WhatsApp numbers. We went on FaceTime night drive together on the 21st of March and started chatting about lots of things since we share many interests, and we started to always send random selfies to each other." Within 2 weeks, Ilia was already giving him pet names. She called him her Uwawawa and wanted to be his, I can't believe I have to say that out loud, wee. Why? Because she'd seen that kitten meme. Cute? Maybe. Concerning? Probably, but soon after, things turned sexual. Ilia started making not safe for work jokes and sent him increasingly explicit photos and videos. She told him she wanted to be skin on skin with him. She eventually confessed her love in a 2.5 minute voicemail and outright called herself his girlfriend. Orby, by his own admission, fell for her. Ilia kept escalating things. She sent him voice notes, teasing him, tempting him. She started sending nude photos, making explicit comments, and even describing how it would look if he, quote, took her from behind, end quote, and things only got more intense from there. Orby was fully hooked. They started making plans to meet up. He was in Germany, she was in Indonesia, but they agreed to save up money to make it happen. She eventually convinces him to meet her in Indonesia, claiming it would be cheaper for the both of them. Eventually, Orby bought the flight. He was determined to meet her, but right before his trip, Ilia asked him to cancel, or at least shorten it just 1 week. She told him money was tight. She said she'd be busy and didn't know if she could take care of him while he was there. But Orby didn't cancel. Instead, he reassured her. He promised he'd handle everything himself. He told her he didn't need fancy restaurants or expensive plans, that he could survive on instant ramen. He said all he wanted was to spend time with her, even if it was just sitting somewhere, smoking a cigarette together and yapping about random shit. He offered to pay for everything: food, gas, activities, even her car repairs. cars. He just wanted to be with her. And so he got on the plane. But as the flight date got closer, Orby started feeling uneasy. Ilia had asked him to cancel or at least cut the trip short just previously. She'd claimed she'd be too busy, that money was tight, and that she couldn't take care of him. And even though Orby reassured her, telling her he didn't need fancy restaurant, that he'd survive on instant ramens, that he just wanted to be with her, something felt wrong. That's when he noticed something strange. One of her Instagram stories was missing. At first, he brushed it off. Maybe she deleted it. Maybe it was just Instagram glitching. But curiosity got the better of him. He asked her directly, "Did you take that story down? Or did you change your settings?" And then she admitted it. She'd hidden it from him. She was hiding something, and Orby knew it. But instead of walking away, he took the flight anyway. When he landed in Jakarta, Ilia picked him up. According to Orby, they spent their first date together, ate a meal, dropped his luggage at a hotel, went to her apartment, got drunk, had sex. He's living the good life and getting everything he ever wanted. However, she then left him alone at his hotel room for 2 days. And when she returned, things got messier. They met again on the 13th, but things didn't feel quite right. Orby discovered Ilia had been hiding more of her Instagram stories from him, and soon his suspicions led to jealousy. He noticed something else. On someone else's Instagram story, he heard her use their pet name, Wee, a name he thought was something special, something just between the two of them. When he confronted her, Ilia brushed it off. She told him she wasn't calling anyone else that. She said she was just joking around, making fun of the wee sounds from her old car video. Nothing more. And as for the guy in question, Ilia reassured him that the man had his own girlfriend. He was just a friend, nothing for Orby to worry about. But Orby wasn't convinced. That pet name meant something to him, and hearing her say it to someone else hurt. A few days passed, and suddenly Ilia's Instagram stories stopped completely. For Orby, that was the final red flag. Something wasn't right, so he made a decision. He created an alt account to stalk her Instagram. And that's when he found out what he'd been dreading. Ilia had been posting. She just wasn't posting where he could see. Using his alt, he watched in shock as she shared updates about another guy. Alarmed, Orby confronted her, but instead of being apologetic, Ilia seemed irritated, more annoyed that he'd made an alt account than about what he'd found. She told him not to worry. That guy, in her words, he was just her mechanic. Orby explained why he'd done it. He said he wasn't stalking her for no reason. He'd made the alt because her stories had stopped, and that felt strange. But when he saw her post, his anger boiled over. He told her, "Turns out you were going on some dates with that guy, MF, while I'm here, Lamau." Ilia's reply, "Remember when I told you to refund the tickets and you said you can't? What am I supposed to do then? I got no choice." Orby shot back, "You always have a choice." Trying to explain herself, Ilia claimed the photos were from before he arrived. She said she hadn't seen the other guy in a while because she was too busy, always out of town, working on her car. She acknowledged that, yeah, it probably looked wrong since Orby was there in person, but otherwise, in her own words, Orby pressed her harder. That's when she told him she had tried to tell him. She said, "Everything about family shits I said in the restaurant was the truest shit," but none of it felt like enough. Later, Orby would summarize the situation simply. On Sunday, he found out Ilia had been hiding her stories from him because she was posting about another guy, and once again, she told him not to worry because, according to her, he was just her mechanic. Finally, after Orby kept on pressing her, demanding answers, Ilia admitted the truth. She told him that the mechanic wasn't just some guy. Her family was actually forcing her to marry him. According to Ilia, she had fought with her family over it. She wanted to be with Orby, but it didn't matter. Different cultures, different expectations. She said it simply wasn't her choice. Orby, narrating the situation, said bluntly, so she decided to hide the truth for 1 month and lied to him instead. And when you read their messages, you can see her struggle in her own words. "My dad is Muslim," she says, and honestly, I can't understand some of the way she types, but I'm trying my best here, so bear with me. "And he's pretty strict about race and shits," she goes on. "I couldn't tell you these things back then because you're about to come here from Germany." She said she had fought with her family because she was, in her words, eager to have him. But her family called her a rebel. They told her that if she went her own way, without their permission or blessing, they wouldn't see her as their child anymore. Her father, she said, fancied the mechanic a lot more than anyone she chose herself. Orby was furious. She'd taken the guy she didn't love, the mechanic, to meet her family, but not him. Ilia tried to explain. She said she didn't actually bring the mechanic to her parents. Her father had simply stopped by his workshop since they lived nearby. And then she said something that to Orby felt like a final justification. At the end of the day, this was her culture. She said that as someone of Asian descent, children were expected to do what their parents told them. That even at 28 years old, since she wasn't married yet, she was still legally and socially under her parents' control. In her words, that was normal. In some cultures, children don't leave their parents' households until they're married. According to Orby, Ilia told him that her family liked the mechanic. They actually fancied him, even if he wasn't her type. She claimed that she wasn't hiding the truth to deceive him. She'd much rather have him. She said she was doing it to protect him, to keep his heart safe. She didn't want to hurt him before he even arrived. And besides, she said she had no choice. Her father and brother followed her Instagram. She had to keep up the act because if they found out, the situation at home would get so much worse. In her mind, this was the only way to manage this situation. To Orby, though, it just felt like the last 3 months with her were complete lies. After all of that, the arguments, the confessions, the lies, they didn't break up. Instead, Ilia and Orby met again, tried to pretend everything was normal, and somehow they decided to keep going. For the rest of his trip, they agreed to spend whatever time they could together, trying to make the most out of it. Even if beneath the surface, everything was already falling apart. Because by this point, Orby wasn't just hurt, he wasn't just heartbroken. Something in him was starting to crack, and Ilia had no idea just how far he'd go next. You might think the worst was over, but it wasn't, because on the day Orby was supposed to leave Indonesia, everything collapsed. It started when Ilia offered to drive him to the airport, a last moment together before saying goodbye. But that drive didn't end with goodbyes. Instead, Ilia, known for her reckless driving, pushed things too far, and somewhere along the way, they crashed. Ilia's beloved car, the one she named Genji, by the way, was totaled. And whether it was named after the Overwatch hero, the historical figure, or something else entirely, one thing was certain: Genji was dead. At some point after the crash, while Orby was still shaken and trying to process what had just happened, Ilia messaged him, and what she asked left him stunned. She asked if she could blame him for the accident. Why? Because he was a foreigner, and according to her, the police couldn't sue him. She asked for his passport, his ID, and his plane ticket. She said it would help her avoid trouble with the authorities, and Orby agreed. He handed over everything, hoping it would help her, hoping he was still protecting someone he cared about. But as soon as he left Indonesia, Ilia changed. While he was flying home, she stopped replying to him. When she did answer, her words were cold, detached, and cruel. She told him, "You're the last person I want to listen to right now, and also the last person I want to see." When he asked where she was, she shot back, "None of your business." Orby said she was hurtful, that she blamed him for what happened, even though, in his words, he just wanted to support her. Though it's worth noting some of Orby's screenshots from these periods seem oddly cropped. In other messages, she told him more directly to stop contacting her for a few days. She said she needed time. She said her world just crumbled and she needed to recover. At one point, she apologized half-heartedly, telling him, "Sorry that I had to say what I said. Depression took over me and I became the ultimate asshole. But yeah, safe flight." It should have ended there, but it didn't. Because after Orby landed back in Frankfurt, she messaged him again. And what set her off this time was Instagram. Apparently, the other guy, the mechanic Ilia had been seeing, found Orby's Instagram highlights. How? I have no fucking clue. But according to Ilia, Gats now believed she'd been cheating on him, even though, as Ilia insisted, she wasn't. She messaged Orby in a panic, saying, "You know the context. What will my parents say about me now? My life is ruined because of the damn misleading posts and highlights. Sigh. What will my family say about me? On my way to be disowned and to be disgraced to my family. Almost got killed by the accident, and now this." And then came the most random moment in this entire meltdown. In the middle of blaming Orby for ruining her life, Ilia casually dropped what might be the most bizarrely baseline of the entire story. She told him, "I ordered some Suisse merch for you." That's it. That's the line. Even in the middle of absolute chaos, she wanted him to know she'd bought him Hololive Suisse merch. I don't get why, but we do love Suisse in this house. She then eloquently added, "Plan to give it to you on August, but I don't know. Nah." Then, almost as if none of the drama mattered, she started demanding his address so she could send him the merch and other goodies once they were done. Orby didn't respond right away. He said he needed time to think, but Ilia wasn't letting it go. They started arguing about his Instagram highlights again. Ilia insisted that his posts were misleading, that they made it look like his trip was all about her, when in reality he'd spent days exploring Indonesia on his own. Orby pushed back. He refused to give her his address. He told her if she really wanted to return the merch, she could just bring it over herself. Ilia snapped. "I'm not going to Germany, bro. The fuck? Address, please. I want to get over this quickly. Do not make another trouble for me, please. Address." And then what felt like the final gut punch. "Alright, we're done here. Thanks for all the investment you wasted on Indonesia and on us. Me and Genji. Sorry that such amount of money you spent ended up being a waste." In the end, Orby wasn't just left heartbroken. He was left feeling like every moment and every dollar had been a mistake. And that's when Orby finally snapped too. He spiraled. He then goes on an absolute rampage. He starts exposing her on Twitter, posting screenshots, sharing every ugly detail of their relationship. He crossed lines. Orby went as far as sharing some of Ilya's private photos, nudes, and he even doxes her real name. And even though the nudes were censored, it was still a serious breach of privacy. At some point, Orby even got in touch with her ex. We don't know how, but messages surfaced showing him talking with Ilya's past partners, digging deeper, gathering dirt, and it only got worse from here on there. One of Ilya's closest friends messaged him. She told him that because of him, Ilia couldn't sleep, that she was traumatized by the accident, that he'd ruined her life, and now he's going on Twitter exposing her. She even accused him of wrecking the car, of causing the crash himself. For Orby, this wasn't just frustrating, it was infuriating, because he knew the truth. Ilia had been the one driving, and now hearing that she was telling her friends otherwise, blaming him for everything, it pushed his frustration to a boiling point. It pushed him even further towards the edge. Every time he thought the situation couldn't get worse, it did. She wasn't just lying to him anymore, she was lying about him. So angry and exhausted, he did what he thought was the only way to defend himself. He sent her screenshots of his WhatsApp messages with Ilia, proof that she'd been the one behind the wheel, proof that he had taken the blame to protect her, not hurt her. But at this point, Orby wasn't just trying to clear his name anymore. He was getting angrier with every lie he uncovered. But the spiral didn't stop, because after all of this, more people started reaching out to him, and he used this information. Other victims, people who claimed Ilia had done similar things to them. Orby described losing nearly 10 kilos from the stress. He said he spent sleepless nights replaying everything that had happened, leaning on friends just to keep him stable. He claimed he wasn't speaking out for revenge, but for justice. He wanted people to know what she was capable of. He wanted to warn others not to fall into the same trap he did. And then he started sharing everything. Google Docs filled with screenshots, evidence, conversations, even testimonies from other people who claimed they'd been through similar experiences. And it wasn't just him. Another victim, someone who'd once been Ilya's best friend, also spoke up. She explained why their friendship ended and made it clear she'd been dragged into Ilya's chaos too, as Ilia had spread rumors about her being a sex addict in the years where she used to know her. For everyone who kept mentioning that I was her best friend in 2015 to 2019, here is why it all ended. All allegations about me being a sex addict was false. I was 14 to 18 years old when I was friends with her. We were a duo and we went everywhere together, but she's always manipulating me so that guys won't approach me. She spun the narrative that I am a sex addict and mentally unstable. I was underage at the time and she spread such lies. I went to a top university in Indonesia and she claimed that she was the one who did my work to enter. It was an on-site test, there is no possible way of help. Everyone knew us as a duo, but she never wants me to appear pretty when I'm with her. If true, that is seriously messed up. But at this point, the line between victim and villain had completely blurred, because Ilia wasn't the only one spiraling. Orby wasn't just heartbroken anymore, he wanted to ruin her. Two people tangled in toxic lies, manipulation, and now revenge. And as Orby's story spread, even more people came forward. Another former friend of Ilia spoke up, someone who had known her from Facebook back in 2019. They described her as the talk of the server back then, the classic Discord kitten type. Cute voice, playful attitude, but there were rumors, stories that she had manipulated multiple guys in their friend group, enough that it eventually caused their entire Discord channel to fall apart. But their story wasn't just about manipulation, they also shared something darker. At one point, this ex-friend said they'd loaned $300 to one of Ilia's close friends, money that was supposed to help him pay his school tuition. But after that friend saw how Ilia's father treated her, angry, controlling, and even abusive at times, he made a decision. Instead of keeping the loan money for himself, he gave it to Ilia so she could run away from home. And as a result, that friend struggled to pay for his final semester. The thread ended with a quiet, painful note. Their friend struggled paying for his school semester because he had given Ilia the money instead. And this part is where Orby truly starts becoming unhinged. I mean, he was already unhinged before, but now even more so. This wasn't heartbreak anymore. This wasn't just venting, this was obsession. Because after everything, after the crash, the accusations, the arguments, Orby decides to go all in. He doesn't just leak a few screenshots. He dropped not one, not two, not three, but 5 separate Google Docs on her. 5. At first glance, it looks like evidence, more testimonies, more screenshots, more receipts, and some of them are, sure. But then, if you look further, there's some deeply unsettling things in there. Because mixed with all of that, Orby included her personal information as well. Names, details, things that should never have been made public. And this wasn't a first offense. He'd already shown a disregard for Ilia's privacy when he shared her censored nude. Now he was exposing everything. It didn't feel like justice anymore. It felt like revenge. His reasoning for dropping Ilia's personal information, he made it clear in his own words. He said this wasn't about drama anymore. It was about bringing her to justice. He included her real name, license plates, addresses, places she worked, places she stayed, Instagram accounts, and phone numbers. Even the workshop she visited regularly and the cars he claimed she'd used to commit traffic violation. He's going crazy. He said police needed to find her. He said, in his own words, bring this woman to the place where she belongs, to jail. And disturbingly, he doesn't even stop here. And while Orby was melting down publicly, Ilia was breaking down privately. Hidden inside one of his Google Docs was a long, unfiltered message exchange between them. And this is where Ilia stopped sounding like a manipulator and started sounding also completely unhinged. She wasn't apologizing, she was reflecting, and she was lashing out at him. And every message only pushed Orby closer to rage. She started by blaming him for everything. First, your problem, it's all begun from your own reckless choice to go here to Indonesia in such time. These things won't happen to you, wouldn't have happened if you weren't here for the first place. She told him that none of this, the crash, the drama, her ruined life would have happened if he hadn't flown to Indonesia at all. And then came the rant. I'm sorry I gotta say that to you, like I'm being ungrateful, but it's just a fact. Secondly, despite all of my overwhelmed works and all that, my sleepless night and overworked times, I shed blood and tears so I can still spend time with you. I fought for you. You had no idea how excruciating it was, how torturing it was, and how tiring it was. She told him he didn't understand what she'd sacrificed him for. I have no such luxury to sleep on a bed with AC and soft blankets. Man, I barely even had any sleep. And not only been sleepless, I worked my ass off, my physical and my mind, to work 3 different jobs at the same time every time. Tried the fucking best to squeeze all this shit so I can meet you. And lastly, my babies that you just belittled is my fucking life. Reminder that the baby she is referring to is her car, Genji. He is my life. I put my life on him too. My life's work, months of cries, drama and pain, months of torments only to build him. I'd rather die than losing him. Yet I fucking crashed him because I was putting you first. And the craziest part is that she blamed him for her own reckless driving. I was trying my best to get you there as fast as I can while I even have 0 sleep. And I ended up crashing my fucking baby because I was micro sleeping for taking you. She even framed the entire crash as her sacrificing her baby for his sake. I would have been go crazy and fucking break everything if it weren't for you. Bro, if I support you, that means it's another sacrifice coming from me, because I don't want to see you. Seeing you traumatize me, and if I come and see you to give you more moral support means I gotta sacrifice my own feelings to do so. I have to choose to leave my severed Genji only to give you moral support. And after all that, she told him that the supporting him emotionally wasn't possible because she was the real victim. You asked me to be the one that giving you moral support while I, the one with the fucking whole lot's bigger problems, to ignore mine and still blame me for that? Holy shit. Finally, she dropped the last blow. And no, we are not in a relationship. We are trying to be it, but clearly the more I know you, the more I know this doesn't work and won't work. For Orby, these weren't explanations, these were insults. She wasn't apologizing for the crash, she wasn't taking responsibility, she was blaming him for everything, and every single message only made him angrier. While Ilia was spiraling privately, she was fueling Orby's breakdown in public. Two people, two spirals, and no way out. One of Orby's many documents wasn't about Ilia directly, it was about her past. Because buried in that evidence dump was a conversation with one of her ex-boyfriends, someone who disturbingly described experiences eerily similar to Orby's. She'd love-bombed, lied, two-timed. It looked like a pattern. Orby questioned everything at this point, even her forced marriage story. Was that even real or just another layer of manipulation? At first you could almost sympathize with him. After all, this was his first relationship, his first girlfriend, and this was how it ended, with a crazy car crash and then an even more insane crash out. But then the conversation took a darker turn. At one point, one of Ilia's ex told Orby bluntly, "You should stop wasting your time for peace, but if you want violence and revenge, then you know what to do." Orby didn't hesitate. He told him that's exactly what he was going to do, that he would go to war, that he'd get justice for himself and for everyone Ilia had treated like shit. Together, they started planning how he could message Guts, the so-called fiancé, how he could send him proof and expose everything. You could see it happening in real time, Orby tipping back and forth between regret and revenge. These exchanges really don't make anybody look good. One moment, he was questioning whether her feelings had ever been real, and the next, he was strategizing how to ruin her. And if there was still doubts about how unstable Orby had become, there's this. Somewhere in those conversations, he apparently said something seriously offensive, potentially racist. We don't know exactly what, since it's not showcased in the screenshots, but it's just another sign that Orby is also super toxic. And then there's one of the most unsettling revelations in Orby's own documents. He admitted that while staying at Ilia's place, he went through her phone. His justification? He was bored. Even though they hadn't known each other long, even though they weren't a long established couple, he rifled through her phone while she wasn't looking. And yes, his suspicions were confirmed, so in a way, perhaps he felt vindicated by it, but the method, disturbing. And what he found on her phone only made things worse, because the ex-boyfriends he'd spoken to wasn't an isolated case. The ex told Orby that Ilia had two-timed him too, and when he confronted her, she denied everything, insisting they were never involved, claiming the other guy was stalking her or just outright delusional. For Orby, this was a confirmation. Ilia wasn't special, she had a pattern. At least, that's what he believed. And now, he was ready to destroy her. In yet another document, he compiled messages from other people who came forward, people who'd also been burned by Ilia. One of them, a girl. She claimed Ilia had tried to steal her boyfriend, flat out. That Ilia lied to her multiple times just to get his attention, manipulating her to get closer to the guy. And then the conversation took a sharp left turn. At one point, the girl bluntly told Orby, "You should probably get yourself checked for STDs," because apparently Ilia once told them her body count? But it didn't stop here. Throughout these conversations, the claims kept getting wilder and wilder. According to this person, Ilia wasn't just two-timing, she was dating multiple people at once, including someone inside the VTuber community, though that relationship was never made public. And of course, a lot of these claims lacked evidence. Then came one of the strangest allegations yet. They said Ilia had a habit of recycling the same sob stories with every guy she dated. Always something about bad illness, a new disease, a convenient tragedy to gain sympathy, in her opinion. But then it got worse. Another person came forward and said Ilia once pretended she was dying. Literally, she faked a terminal illness just so she could ghost a guy and disappear from the relationship. She'd used the same trick repeatedly, allegedly pretending she was sick, pretending she was dying whenever she needed a way out. insane. At this point, even Orby seemed overwhelmed because what started as a breakup had turned into a pattern of lies, one that stretched far beyond him. But one of the most unhinged documents he released detailed how he contacted the other guy, Gats, the man Ilia claimed she was being forced to marry, the one that started this entire charade. Orby opened the document by saying Gats didn't want to believe that his future wife was, in Orby's words, a so he decided to convince him. The document contains screenshots of Orby directly messaging Gats. His opening line asking Gats if he wanted to see a video of Orby having sex with Ilia, so he'd finally believe the truth. Gats, apparently skeptical, told him just send. When Gats suggested the video might be AI or fake, Orby flooded him with more photos, more evidence. At this point, whatever sympathy people had for Orby was completely fading. Yes, he had been manipulated, lied to, and cheated on, but now it was starting to feel different. It wasn't about justice, it was about destruction. Orby didn't just want Ilia to pay, he wanted to ruin her completely. And at this point, the story wasn't just Twitter drama anymore. It blew up so much that it hit local news once again. A second article was published about Ilia, this time not for reckless driving, but for the chaos unleashed by her ex-boyfriend's expose. The headline, "Remember Ilya Kashkova? She's back in Twitter talk after being skinned by her ex-boyfriend." Once again, Ilya's name became a public spectacle across the Indonesian social media. But this time, it wasn't because of a viral tweet. The article states, this was known from a tweet on the Twitter account based Orby, which was shared on July 13, 2025. In the tweet, it was explained that Ilya Kashkova had manipulated him to the point of almost dying due to reckless driving on the road. According to him, he got to know Ilia from the YouTube channel until the communication continued on Twitter. The move continued to Instagram and WhatsApp. Their relationship grew closer until they finally became a couple. The figure named Orby left the country for Indonesia just to meet Ilia. According to him, the relationship became more serious until intercourse occurred. But who would have thought? Apparently, Ilia had been having an affair and admitted that she had actually married the man who had been arranged for her. Now, important clarification, that article claims Ilia admitted to marrying Gats while having an affair, but after going through Orby's threads, his documents, and whatever remains of Ilia's now deleted Twitter accounts, I couldn't find any confirmation of that admission or the marriage. Nowhere in her messages and nowhere in the leaks. So while the news article pushes that angle, I'd take that claim with a grain of salt. In the end, Ilya Kashkova vanished. Her streams were already silent, her social media completely nuked after her reckless driving made national news, and her car left in pieces. And the man who once sat beside her in that car, he exposed her, dragged every private detail into the public eye, and in the process revealed just how unhinged he had become. Because Ilia wasn't just reckless behind the wheel, she played with fire. She played with her own life, racing down highways. She played with as many men as she could, keeping them hooked with lies and manipulation, and eventually she found the one who would burn her back. So, what do you think? Was Ilya Kashkova a manipulator, a victim, or just someone who spiraled too far and took everyone else down with her? Let me know what you think in the comments, because in the end, this wasn't just a car crash. It was a slow motion disaster, and the wreckage is still smoldering. If you enjoyed today's breakdown and want to support the channel, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss future uploads. And if you want exclusive videos, anime reactions, and unfiltered commentary I can't post here on YouTube, check out my Patreon linked in the description. Your support helps keep these deep dives going every single week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I really wanted to enjoy the car I tuned myself, so of course I'd take a taxi. What the fuck? So of course I'd take a taxi. I'd try it out. So of course I'd take a taxi. I'd try it out without bothering other drivers. Ilia had asked him to cancel or at least cut the trip short. She claimed she'd be too busy, that money was tight, that she couldn't take care of him. Wait, I've already read that. Oh, no, it's another part, sorry. Over. He told her, turns out you were going on some dates with that guy, motherfucker, while I'm a... Well, what the fuck? But none of it felt like enough. Later, or... You might think the worst... Raspy voice. You might think the worst was that perhaps the backlash you received from the endless... That perhaps the backlash she was, in her words, eager... She said she had fought with... And when you